10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yo, 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 what up? All of our boggies out there, we are back. I know it's been some time, Daryl.
It's been some time, Aaron.
It's been some time. It's been way too much time, but we are back, kicking it off with episode 30 of YBOG, starting out with a series on love. This episode is entitled, What is Love? Baby, don't hurt me. You know what I'm talking about? We're going to be talking about the different aspects of love, how culture defines it, how we define it, how Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it, and then different words for it in the Greek, and kind of jump into those. We'll be going over in later episodes as well, the biblical perspective and psychological perspective, but you're not going to want to miss this series on love. Hope you enjoy. Listen up. Stay seated, stay sanding. Where are you at? It doesn't matter. Just enjoy the episode.
Keep driving.
Keep. And now, we will enter into unbroken eye contact for 60 full seconds. Eye contact has been known by medical doctors to increase intimacy between partners, friends, brothers, sisters, mothers and fathers, and all of the like. If you'd like to partner with us in unbroken eye contact, please contact 95169. I'm not going to give my real number.
Unbroken.
1-800-UNBROKEN. 1-800-INTIMACY for your free pamphlet. What's up, everybody? It is Aaron.
And Daryl.
And we are coming back to you with another episode of Your Brain on
God. Wow.
God, I've missed that.
Oh, yeah, me too. That feels good, huh?
That feels really, really good, Daryl. We're on episode 30. Episode 30, I believe, Daryl. And honestly, we haven't done an episode since last October.
Last year,
guys. But we're back in action because we're, stuff happens. Life happens sometimes. Sometimes you can't control it. And I don't know. Yeah. It wasn't actually for some crazy reason.
Nothing crazy happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually COVID happened. That's what did happen.
No, we were going through COVID.
Yep, we did. Yep, it was we just stopped doing it. Anyway, we're back.
Actually, no, that's actually true. I had COVID.
Yeah,
I did get COVID, and then that initiated the break.
Yeah,
and then holidays happened.
And then holidays happened.
And then we were in the new year, and we're like, hey, let's get set.
Yeah, and then we wanted to plan some good stuff for you guys, man, because we were just ready to go. So I guess you would call this season 2 of Your Brain on God. Yeah, the 30th episode, absolutely. Season 2, episode 1.
Yeah.
Boom! 29 episodes, including episode 10 and a half. So that's 30 episodes right there. 30 episodes for season 1. The next 30... Season 2, baby. Season 2. My goodness. Well, we're so excited that you joined us on this episode 30/31, depending on if you count a half episode as an episode. And we're going to be going into a couple episodes on a similar topic, namely the same topic, which is, what is it, Daryl? Tell the good people.
It's love. That's it. We're going to be talking about love. Love in all of its different kinds of forms and shapes and sizes, and, bringing some insight from things that we research and look up, and some of our personal experiences as well. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love love.
I love love. Who doesn't love love?
Everybody loves love.
If they didn't love love, would it be something else?
Maybe.
Maybe it wouldn't be love.
Maybe it wouldn't be love. But we're talking about what is love today.
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me, baby. Don't hurt me. Yeah, we talk about love. We're really excited to get into this topic because I think just in our it's so confusing, or it can be confusing, or there's so many definitions of love, or we all view love differently, and so we kind of wanted to give like a broad view of love, maybe our perspective on what love actually looks like, what actually looks like practically, kind of our experience of being loved, of loving other people, what we learn from the Bible of love, what psychology tells us about love, and so we're going to be going into a series this episode talking about kind of what has culture defined defined as love, and then maybe some of our own personal definitions. And then next week we'll be going into the biblical definition, or I'm sorry, in 2 weeks from now we'll be going through the biblical definition of love, and then we'll be hitting on the psychology of what actually goes on in our brain. But yeah, we wanted to talk about kind of the differences, the different views that people have on love, because there's so many different perspectives and so many different ideas, especially that are even maybe thrown at us, or that we kind of adopt little ideas or ideals more that we have about love that come through culture naturally.
Yeah, we pick up our understanding of what love is basically just through life, and so we just end up absorbing these different perspectives or our own little understandings, but maybe not a full or a healthy view of what love is. And I was watching this short TED Talk video of what is love, and it basically was saying it cannot be defined. And we so often try to define love by comparing it to other things, but it seems like it's elusive, and the definition of love is elusive. So how can we love well if we don't really know what love is? Or if we're misunderstanding maybe what love is, or we had a poor representation or poor examples around us of what love looks like.
Right.
And so that can cause us to live in a way that is affecting the way that we love others, right, or how we end up receiving love from others. It can be hard for us to receive love because of how we have seen love modeled.
Right.
And so some of those things, like ideas of love that we get from like movies, we see a lot of usually it's romantic love. When we talk about love, I feel like so often our first go-to is romance.
Right.
And that's the way it's so often portrayed. And when we talk about love, it's always in context of significant others and, in love songs, love movies, finding the one. Yeah. And this idea, it gets ingrained inside of us that's what love is about. But I think that it's about more than that.
Yeah, it's about way more than that. Yeah, I think there's we get bombarded from when we're very young with saturation of movies and music, and you don't have to. Basically every single song or every single movie has some sort of touch on some love story or some affection that happens, some relationship that gets kicked off. It could be the most violent movie ever, but at some point in the movie, there's an intimate scene or, this affection that stirs up in one of the main characters, right? And then we grow up in our lives because we see that so often, right? That is kind of like the ultimate picture of what love looks like, is this kind of fully embraced, fully immersed in this almost like this love trance, right? Where you have even from like a classic Disney movie, right? You have the princess who falls in love with the prince, or the prince saves her or whatever, which has its own, social ideas and stuff like that. But we get these ideas about almost that as like a need, or like the highest quality of love is to be in a relationship with somebody, right? We live in a culture that maybe is breaking down marriage, more of the actual institution of marriage, right? But at the end of the day, most people I talk to, they want to get married, they want to have a relationship, they want to be with somebody. If not, they want to be married, they want to be intimate with somebody, right? And it's usually in that relational, in that intimate setting, actually a romantic kind of love, right? And so we get these kind of false notions of love is love at first sight, right? Love is blind, kind of ideas of I'm a hopeless romantic falling into love, seeing somebody and being absolutely filled with this intoxicating feeling, right? And so we have this certain set view of love, which often gets us into trouble a lot of times, like you were saying, Daryl, right? If we have a certain view of love, it can actually keep us from loving people because our view of love is limited, right? So oftentimes in our culture, our idea of love has been limited to the pop songs and the ideals, more of the ideals of love than actually the practice of love. I think that's the problem, is that we have such an ideal of it. I was just talking to my roommate AJ just last night, and he was saying, sorry, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, AJ, but But he was saying he's a writer, right? So he's constantly in his imagination, right? He's constantly writing about the ideal, right? He's constantly writing about a character going on a journey, finding, a great treasure, an amazing thing. And so he's focused on all these ideals. And he thinks that somehow that's like even gotten into his brain in general, sometimes even relationships, looking at a person and trying to see whatever is inside of his imagination for that relationship, the ideal of that. And that can get you into trouble, right?
Yeah. And so some of those ideas of love, like you were just saying, that love is just a feeling. It's like about the feeling that you have for another person, and or love is blind, like we say. That's a phrase that we pick up. Whether you believe that's true or not, it's something that we learn as we grow up. At least in our country, in our society, that love is blind. We hear that phrase, and that affects the way that we see what love is.
Right.
Love is. We try to earn love from people, earn affection. I mean, we try to earn or feel like people don't deserve our love as well,
Right.
and not to say that these are correct or incorrect, but these are things that we pick up as we come out, we go through life. Or that love stinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a song.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, we get broken views of love, right? So a lot of what we see of love comes from the family, at least what we start thinking about love, right? We can blame culture and social media and, pop culture, movies and all that kind of stuff. But probably I would say the primary way that we truly get love as well is in the family, right? So through how your parents love each other, how, the experience of love that you have in the home, kind of good or bad, right? That kind of sets us up for a lot of our views on marriage, on love. I know that, coming out of like a divorced family and a family where there's a lot of trouble. I'll just say that, right? In marriage, I came out having to fight a lot of ideas about marriage or a lot of ideas about love. I think that I saw growing up a lot of people chasing, chasing down feelings, chasing down people. And they would use those same phrases that you're talking about. Like, I just fell out of love,
Right.
And I'm like, what does that even mean? How do you just fall? You mean you just stopped? You just stopped choosing to love that person? What do you mean you fell out of love? Like, you just fall into it and then you just fall out of it? Like, don't you have to work or climb yourself out of that place of love? I mean, you don't just wake up one day out of love, right? You had to get there somehow, right? So I started kind of growing like a jaded, bitter perspective on what love actually looks like, right? And so I think a lot of those things are really important, in the home, to recognize, okay, what are some of the ideas of love that I actually have inside of me, right?
Yeah.
And then how can I actually work past some of those things, or not work past, I don't like that so much, work through those things to actually discover what actual genuine love looks like, what it feels like, what it tastes like.
I think that's actually a really, really great point, is this recognizing our own views of love.
Right.
Because if we don't take an intentional look at how we view love and an intentional look into how we understand love, then we're probably not going to make an intentional effort to change anything that might be broken about our view of love.
Right.
And we probably would just continue to perpetuate whatever love that we saw, whatever love that we received. We're just going to continue to give that out. But if we take a moment to stop and to think about what love is for me in my experience, what kind of love did I experience, or what do I really mean when I say I love somebody, or when someone says they love me, and what do I take that to mean? And if we can take that and kind of look at it for a second and think, is this a true representation of what like healthy, good love looks like? Because if it's not, I know for me personally, I would want to make a change. I would want to shift that in my mind, or change the way that I understand love to what I understand love to be, so that I can love somebody better and not make the same mistakes that I've seen other people make, and maybe move towards the good examples that I've seen in my life of wondering, well, how did that person have such good relationships? Whether it's friendships or if it's, being married for 60 years, it's like, and seeming like they actually enjoy their marriage.
Right.
It's like, I want to look at them and see like, well, what does that mean to love well? The people who have those good relationships. But if I'm not willing to look at my own experience of being loved, or of trying to love other people, then I'm probably not going to learn the changes that I need to make.
So what's your view of love, Daryl?
Well,
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
So whenever I think of, in my own experience, when I say like, if I were to say someone loves me, the things that come to mind are a feeling of acceptance, like that person accepts me. I know that person accepts me on a deep level, right? And it's not like I can do something and all of a sudden they're going to be out of my life. If it's like I don't know. I mean, obviously there are some big things that can be done, but I feel like they accept me on a deep level where I can show up and I can be vulnerable.
Right.
When I say somebody loves me or feel loved by somebody, I probably feel safe with them. I probably feel like a priority, like important on some degree, and like they're willing to support me and believe in me, and have a level of affection for me, whether it's a family or friends or like my wife Brittany. I think, and a disclaimer, maybe not a disclaimer, but I mean, me and Aaron, we're not like being married for decades, and so I don't think we're going to try to bring some like marital advice through this, but we want to talk about love on a broader perspective. So we touch on, significant others, but when I talk about me loving my wife or me loving somebody else, those are going to be a little bit different. Like if when I say I love Brittany, I mean it in a kind of a different way than when I say I love Aaron. Or when the way I love my mom.
Or that I love pizza.
Right. Which I love cheesecake. I do love cheesecake.
I love ice cream. Cheesecake. Oh, gosh.
No, I love board games too, and the word love just ends up getting washed out. And so whenever I think about it more intentionally with like, I love my wife, I'm saying I'm committed to her. I support her. I want to be intentional about maintaining a healthy relationship with her. I want to lean into the things that might be uncomfortable for the sake of the health of our relationship.
Right.
I'm willing to lay myself down in order for her benefit. And I have a deep affection for her. That's part of it too, is this deep affection and desire for her, and wanting her to be happy and healthy and good and to flourish. And it seems like love is such a big concept, and in the English language at least we have one word to describe all these different experiences,
right?
That when we look into other languages there are multiple words to describe these kinds of things. But before we get to that, Aaron, what is love? When you think of love, what do you think of?
Pain.
I'm kidding. Hey, that's okay. That's part of it.
I think I think it's really important to distinguish between those different types of love, because we do say I love you or I love that, about everything. Love is a very broad category. I think specifically to me, one of the most important aspects of love, not like its primary meaning, but its primary like aspect to me is selflessness. So I think like the ability to put somebody else's needs above your own and see them even past your own fears, failures, anxieties, to see them past their own flaws, to see them past what you want out of them. I think that's like a huge part of it for me. That's a huge part of it for me, is being able to be able to be selfless, and then actually let go of myself to actually take care of like another person. Like I think when I think of love, I think of faithfulness, like loyalty in the friendship aspect, faithfulness in an intimate setting. I think showing up, you know what I mean? And then like almost, I would say like doing the dirty work, I guess, of like actually caring for that person. You know what I mean? If you love something, you're going to care for it. You're going to tend to it, you're going to give it what it needs to grow. You're going to encourage him, those types of things. You actually pour into something that you love, right? You take care of it. So I think that, as far as being loved, I think those are, I think being known for like being loved is where I kind of gather like, man, that person loves me, as if they like know me and then act out of that place of knowing, or knowing what I need even. Some people say love is the process of meeting needs.
Yeah,
right?
I was just thinking about that.
And I think one time it was actually a story about I was having a hard time, really rough time. And Daryl, I called him over. I was like, bro, I need to talk to somebody. And you came, I might have talked about this in a previous podcast, but you came into my room and I was laying on the floor, probably like, 2 tears streaming down my eyes or something like that, like just having a rough time. And then Daryl didn't say a word. He just came into my room and then just laid on the floor next to me. And I was like, like that was like a picture of love is being like, is being known, you know what I mean? Like kind of knowing the heart of me, being able to understand what I needed in that moment, take some time to actually be patient with somebody, all of those different kinds of things. So I think those are big things for me.
Yeah, that's good. I think that definition of love, the process of meeting needs, is a very practical one that that is helpful for us to have in mind. Like whenever I'm trying to love somebody, it's like it really does come down to that. How can I help meet this person's need? Like how do I in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's we're gonna read a couple definitions from the dictionary. Let's see what the dictionary has to say about love, because when you want to learn about love, you go to
Merriam,
the most objective
the most
scientific way of putting something into a box. So let's see.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see.
Welcome to putting love in a box.
Read
a couple.
So I'm going to read the noun and then I'll also read a couple things from the verb. The funny thing is that there are so many definitions. When you look up love in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, there are so many different ways of defining love as a noun. Okay, so first, a strong affection for another arising out of kinship or personal ties. There's attraction based on sexual desire, affection, and tenderness felt by lovers. Affection based on admiration, benevolence, or common interests. So those are all 3 different variations of the first definition, and those seem like 3 completely different things.
Those seem like pretty. They all had to do with some sort of feelings or affection or whatever.
They did all have they did all have affection in there. That's true. All kind of different ways of expressing or experiencing affection, I guess.
Did you feel like they were surface level though?
A strong affection for another rising out of kinship or personal ties.
Personal ties? It's like what? I have personal ties with you, so I guess I'll love you.
I guess I'll love you. Attraction based on sexual desire.
Right. That seems like
affection and tenderness felt by lovers. Same definition.
Affection or tenderness felt by lovers.
Yeah. Affection based on admiration, benevolence, or common interests.
Benevolence. That's just like, what is that? Altruism? The goodness of someone's heart? Benevolence?
It's like goodness, acting out of kindness. Yeah, disposition to do good.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's another way of defining love: warm attachment, enthusiasm, or devotion. Unselfish, loyal, and benevolent concern for the good of another. Right. There is an amorous episode.
A what? Amorous? What's that?
I don't even know what that word is, but it says it's a love affair. It's another way of the sexual embrace is what this. Okay, these are all just random definitions. Let's go down some
Where
more.
are you now, Daryl? Are you still on Merriam?
I'm still looking on Merriam-Webster. Okay, now as a verb, love as a verb, to hold dear or to cherish, to feel a lover's passion, devotion, or tenderness for. So if I love somebody, I feel passion, devotion, or tenderness for them. To like or desire actively, take pleasure in. The last one is to thrive in. Interesting.
To thrive in? Like, I love this.
Like,
yeah,
like the rose loves sunlight.
Right.
Wow.
None of those really talked about, like, what we talked about. I felt like the care of another. Like, I guess like maybe those would be synonyms or something. Like, or what we none of those really talked about. Like, as far as us feeling loved or something like that. I didn't. None of those hit.
But those are our experience of love,
right? Those are our experiences of love. But
yeah, I mean that affection part, it makes sense.
Yeah, obviously, having affection can be deeper. It's not just like surface level. You can I have affection for Abby, you obviously have affection for your wife, or I have affection for you as a friend, that kind of stuff. Like that goes and that comes from, knowing them,
I was
growing with
talking
them, having
to
a
my
relationship.
wife, and she mentioned affection was one of the first things she said, but she said it in like a deep affection, or like a strong affection that has like taken root inside of her. It's kind of like how she was describing it when she feels like she loves somebody. It's like having a strong affection that now has like almost become a part of who she is for that person.
Right. Characterized by the affection that you have.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
good.
There are so in other languages, there are so many different ways
Yeah.
of talking about love. There's something that we didn't mention earlier. One thing that we can think of, one of the things maybe we learn about love is the honeymoon phase.
Right.
The honeymoon phase is so interesting. And there's probably a lot of ways we can talk about this. And I think when we go into the psychology of love, we're going to talk about this again. But the honeymoon phase is, the lovey-dovey feelings inside the butterflies. It lasts for a little bit. And this is maybe where you would say love is blind, where you don't notice anything bad about the other person. All their flaws are non-existent, and you fully love everything and accept everything about them. And not that you can't also do that when you do see the flaws.
Right.
But I think in the honeymoon phase, it's like this overabundance. And what I thought was so fascinating was that when we say that in English in our society, it's like a negative thing. When we talk about the honeymoon phase, it's like, oh, they're just in the honeymoon phase, and like they're up in the clouds. They're not in reality, and one day they're gonna come crashing down. Like that feeling.
Is true. It
like
is so negative, huh?
Yeah, it's like that feeling that you have is gonna be lost. It's like it's not gonna feel as good as it feels right now.
It's like people already just like set you up to experience the loss of that. It's like they belittle you for being so excited. That's kind of a weird thing, actually. I'm mad.
Bro, as soon as I got engaged, it was so weird.
Everyone changes,
weird. Huh? There was such a weird shift in the social circles. People in my relationships with me. It was like before I got engaged, everybody was talking about marriage.
Just
and
want
how,
you to
like,
get,
like, oh, are you gonna get married? Oh, you guys thinking about marriage? And talking about all sweet and like fun about it and like lighthearted and like, oh wow, I can't believe you guys are gonna get married. Oh, that's so awesome. As soon as I get engaged, everyone's like, man, marriage is the worst. Marriage is so hard, man. Just be ready.
You're going to lose your soul, man. Everything about your character is going to be blended into theirs. You're not even going to know who you are anymore.
It was so weird. The quick shift that took place. It was like before being engaged, everybody who talked to me about marriage, everything was super like uplifting, hopeful, and encouraging. And then when I got engaged, there were so many people who started talking about marriage in a bad way of like how it's hard for them, and not just for them, but how it's hard in general. And obviously I wasn't expecting it to be some easy breezy thing, but
hey, can I make a public service announcement real quick about that? People, shut up. That's all I got to say. And like, honestly, mind your own dang business.
But it's like, I don't mind the encouragements or even, hey, be sure to communicate everything because that's important.
Right.
That's good. But if I didn't have people in mind who had good, successful, healthy, thriving marriages, that would be discouraging to me.
So discouraging, yeah.
But when people would say that to me, the things that it was almost like they're trying to deter me from getting married. Like, oh, are you sure you actually want to do this? Is the relationships that I have seen modeled that are good and healthy and thriving log way down the road, right? That's what gives me hope, is because I've seen healthy relationships. I've seen unhealthy relationships too, but I've seen healthy relationships, and it's only because of those that kept me really like, I know this is possible.
Right.
Anyways, honeymoon phase in our society so often can seem like a negative type of thing. But in our research, I came across some different words in different languages, and one of the fascinating ones was in Arabic, they have multiple words for love. They have a specific word for the honeymoon phase.
That's awesome.
And it comes from the word that means vine in the Arabic as well. And when I was reading this description, it talked about how it's the way they understood it was like the place that love first goes to grow. So it's like that's where the growth of love starts, is during the honeymoon phase.
Right.
And so this concept of it being tied to a vine and the growth that comes in the fruit.
And the intoxication of I would imagine, even of like the vine and the grapes come from grapes. The vine, and that produces wine or whatever. There's like this merriment that comes from being the vine. I don't know if that's where they're going.
I don't know. It wasn't talking about the intoxication as much as the space for.
I'm a hopeless romantic. Daryl.
I mean, that happens too.
Yeah.
But it was talking about the space for love to grow. It's like that's the place from which love grows after from the honeymoon phase. And so it views the honeymoon phase, I feel like, in a completely different light. I don't know if people in Arabic cultures and societies actually see it that way because the culture is so different. I know that obviously there's a lot of history of arranged marriages with certain cultures in the Middle East, and but that still is that same space. It's like that honeymoon phase is now this space where you learn how to love each other well while everything's exciting and happy, and you're not focused on the negative things, but you're seeing the positive things. It's during that time that we build a foundation for love to grow.
Right.
And it's just
cool.
the word that they have for it creates a different experience than when we say honeymoon phase here.
Yeah, that's why it's important to have those different words to actually experience love on different levels, to see it in different ways, right?
Yeah, and the different words that we have change the way that we understand love or what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, four big words for love as well in the Greek language, and that's kind of where we're going to sit for a little bit talking about, what is love. I think coming from like a biblical perspective in the New Testament written in Greek, as well as I think all the ancient philosophers, kind of dabbling in that language as well. I think it's important to talk about like the big four. I got a book by C.S. Lewis right here called The Four Loves, and it's the four different words for love in Greek, and it's storge, I think, storge, something like that. Storge, it's phileo. There's eros, and then there's agape, and so we kind of want to expand on these four different types of loves, because I think they give us a deeper perspective than just our English language does, of just saying, I love my mom, and I love my friends, and I love my wife, and I love God. Those are incredibly nuanced, like different types of love, right? You have affectionate love, you have familial love, you have erotic love, and then you have kind of like godly or sacrificial, self-giving love, right? And so we want to dive into those to give us a greater picture of what it actually looks like. And I think when we have a greater picture, like you said, if our view of love is very, very limited, or we have certain ideas, say about like something like the honeymoon phase or something in our culture, right? We'll get trapped in that kind of stuff. But if we can expand to actually see what these different words mean, then maybe it'll give us a greater grasp on love and help us love better, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is actually storge or storge. I don't know how to actually say it.
I think it's storge.
I think it's storge. But this is actually, it's one of my favorite ones that C.S. Lewis writes about, but it's familial love. And so it's the love that you would have between like a mother and a son, a parent and the kid, maybe brothers and sisters. And this is a type of love that's basically built around familiarity, right? So you love your sister and your brother, you love your parents in a much different way than you would love like your friends, right? That's why it feels like even I want to go when you're growing up, it's like I want to go hang out with my friends. Like it's just a different arena, it's a different space, right? It's often built around that familiarity, so you're always growing up in there. So there's not what C.S. Lewis talks about is there's a lot of expectations, but there's a different kind of way that we operate in love. Maybe it doesn't always look like you would act to an intimate partner or to a friend. You don't even treat them the same way because of that familial space. You allow for certain things to slide, right? Like where you can make fun of each other like crazy. You could scream at each other and say, "I hate you." You know what I mean? Like you can get super, super angry and say the worst things. And at the end of the day, your family, right?
Right.
Your family, and there might be like hardships and stuff like that, but like there's still like that, almost like that comfortability. I think it also has a leaning towards well, it has two leanings. One's towards more like less intentionality in the way, at least the way that I view it, less intentionality in the way that we love. Because, for instance, I'll take this. I'm a pastor. And I would go to church and I would love on a whole bunch of people. And then like when I was living at home, I was still leading the youth group, but still living at home for a period of time. And I would go love on all these students, do all these amazing things, like, hang out with friends, be super like intentional or whatever. And then I couldn't even like make my bed or like do things that my parents wanted me to do around the house in the morning. You know what I mean? Like there was like this lack of intentionality because it's so familiar. Like they know who you are. Right. And so there's like a lack of intentionality, I guess, but it also can keep you in sort of types of binds. So what C.S. Lewis talked about is like familial love actually becoming, or storage love actually becoming suffocating as well, which is really, really interesting, right? Like we always, whether we've experienced it or I've seen it in our friends, right? The suffocating parents or the suffocating mothers or the suffocating fathers, right? Like the ones that love you so much that they actually suffocate with you with your love to the point that you actually hate them. And he talks about this lady called Mrs. Fidget, and it's like it's the greatest. If you read the Four Loves, just read this chapter. It's so good. But he talks about Mrs. Fidget, and it's like this mom who loves her kids so much that they grow to resent her, right? And everyone in the family actually don't thrive in the household because of how much she loves, because she always has to have things taken care of. She always has to, wants things a certain way. She controls in her household because she's trying to protect her kids so much so that it actually breeds resentment in the house, right? Yeah. So it has some of these tendencies, but I think there's also that sense of home as well that Storge allows, right? That familial where it's like, you know each other, even though that can breed some traps as well.
Right. And one of the other things that he talks about, right, with the same type of love is the danger of demanding love and response. Yes, right? When he talks about like if a parent loves a child and then starts berating the child for not loving the parent back and for certain things, or like, hey, I've done all these things for you. I take care of you. I love you. And you're not even listening to me. And in an attempt to create love, really, because that's really an attempt to create love in the relationship. It's like, I'm loving you and you love me back. Yeah. In that attempt, instead of creating love, it's, what does he say? He says, we shut off the fountain from which we desire to drink from. Right. And we do things in order to try to create a love response, but in doing so, what we do is we create guilt inside. And when the guilt is felt, love isn't given as a response. Even if the action is taken that you wanted to have, it's like, okay, I'll go give my mom a hug because she's guilting me so bad, Right. It's not actually coming from the place of love, which is what ultimately we're looking for. Right.
Yeah, it has a tendency to move towards need love. So that's like a big word that C.S. Lewis uses is like the difference between need love and gift love, right? So, especially with like parents and their kids, right? There can be this need love that is given, right? Like I've talked to recent, couples and that just had a baby or whatever, and they were kind of talking about like the hardships of just having a baby because the mom like loves the baby more than the husband now, like
all the affection is going to
all the affection
the
baby. is going to the baby, and when you pour out so much on your kids, give so much to your kids, there can be a natural dependency that gets formed or expectation for them to return that love in the same way, right? And then it could even almost feel like unrequited love or this son. And that's why you have kids that move out of their parents' houses or something like that, and then their parents are like, you never come over, or you're never, you never, like, it's almost like you never give back to the family. Like you're never present. You're never here. You don't do this enough. You don't spend enough time, and it's like, wait, what the heck? So it can form into a lot of different, I don't know, a lot of different weird stuff. You know what I mean? Like it can form a lot of
you're
problems.
needing the person to need you. You love,
Exactly.
yeah, it's like you loving on that person, but really because you're needing them to need you. And if they're not
Right.
needing you, you get offended.
Right. And
You
I
get
think
hurt by
that's
it.
a love that we fall into all the time, whether or not it's in, storge or not. I think need love is not love.
Right.
In my own
Yeah.
mind, it's not love at all. Like if I'm loving you because I need you to give me a response, then it's not selfless in the first place. I'm only loving you to get something in response, and so for me, that's like anti-love in the first place, right? And so I think that's often where we can stay a lot of the times in our love for others, in our all that different kind of stuff is in that need love rather than gift love, which is I'm actually giving love freely to you. Like I don't need you to respond. I don't need you to be, even necessarily kind to me, although it's nice to get a response. It's always nice to, have someone return that love, right? And then that's how we end up getting our hearts so broken, right? Is because often the love that we're talking about is need love, right?
Right, yeah.
It's like giving that love, and then when that love isn't actually given back to us, right? We're like, what the heck? I did all of this stuff and you didn't return that love. Like, and I think that's even on a spiritual level. I've been there. There was a guy that I made friends with in college. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before. But oh goodness, I can't remember his name.
Well,
Shoot.
if you're listening,
yeah, if you're listening, no,
You'll know who you are.
he wouldn't be listening. Well, he was a guy that I actually met up on the streets. Like he was addicted to like a lot of different drugs and stuff like that. Did I tell you this story? Have I said this on podcast before?
I don't know if you said it on the podcast.
He was addicted to a lot of different drugs, and I just became friends with him and started pouring into him, started meeting up with him like every day and just loving on him, right? Or at least it was still acts of love and acts of kindness, right? And he said that he wanted to get off the streets, he wanted to go to rehab, right? So I started putting this stuff together over maybe a month or two or something to get him into Teen Challenge, into like rehab centers, and was loving on him and was meeting him, and as the days got closer, he wanted to like stay in hotels, so I was spending over like $100 to get him a motel for the night, him and his girlfriend, and I think she had a kid and stuff like that, and I'm putting him, I'm like I'm a college kid, I don't have any money, but I'm like giving, and then I'm like, okay, if it finally gets the day before I'm taking him to rehab, and I'm like, so you're gonna meet me at 10 a.m. I'm gonna drive you to the rehab center, they're gonna pick you up or whatever, they said that they'll take you in tomorrow. I planned all this stuff out, right? And then he didn't show. And so I got on the bike, or I got on my skateboard, and I went to the park that he was always hanging out, and I see that he's just riding his bike with this other girl or whatever, and they were like looked pretty high and stuff, and I was so mad. I was so mad, and I was like, bro, like I put all this stuff together for you. You know what I mean? Like I poured out all this stuff. I spent money on you. Like you didn't show up, and he just told me like, oh, I'm not gonna go to rehab. Like he just like changed his mind. Like I'm just not ready to go or whatever. And I was like, yeah, right. And so I got all mad. I like stormed off, went back to the house or whatever, and then got sternly corrected by the Lord. And he was like, did you? Which was a thank you God for doing that. But he was like, did you love that guy for him or for you? And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, dang it.
Jeez. Like, yeah,
Right, yeah.
So like, that's often what we're doing is when we're loving people, I think it's not just a thing that can stay in the affection stage of storge, but can reach all different areas of love.
Right. Where we actually end up loving them for us.
Yeah.
It becomes about us instead
Right.
of about them. Where we're trying to have them feel something that's inside of us.
Right.
Instead of just loving them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's good. Phileo?
Phileo. Brotherly affection.
Or friendship, love between friends. It's talked about in that way.
Yeah. The freest of all loves.
Yes, the freest of all loves. And C.S. Lewis talks about it being the most unnatural.
Yeah.
Or the least dependent on, our biological or our social constructs and stuff. Mm-hmm. That this kind of love is the most unnecessary when we look at all those aspects.
Right. Yeah. Like you need a parent to be like raised. And so you need that storge kind of love. And you need to procreate, you need like erotic love,
Mm-hmm.
But with friendship, even though probably a lot of psychologists now today, and it is true that we definitely we're made for relationship and need relationship, but a lot of people go without friendships. right? Like
Yeah.
like true, genuine friendships.
Right.
And that's why C.S. Lewis says it's the most maybe unnatural or, even maybe unreasonable, because it doesn't actually meet some of those like basic biological needs, like procreating or having a child being reared and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's not just about being around other people and having people that you know and talk to you and hang out with, right? It's like it's actually a deeper level of friendship. It's not just like a surface level camaraderie kind of thing. Like if you're on a team with a bunch of people and you're doing something together, that's not really what phileo is talking about. It's like an intentional, deeper level of friendship and affection towards another person that's not at all romantic or sexual, but is a unique expression of love, of phileo.
Yeah, I think this one has been blurred a lot of the time. Friendship, because of there's such a blur between like I guess intimacy and like even attraction in nowadays culture where it's almost seems. I mean, when I was growing up as like a guy, like you didn't actually get close to other guys. You know what I mean? Because it somehow was like blended in with some sort of erotic love, and I think that's a huge miss. I think in our culture to blend so deeply this kind of phileo love with erotic love, and that goes girls and girls, guys and guys, or whatever, and even guys and girls. But I don't think that really ever works out. But there's such a blend. So yeah, like I said, when I was growing up, it was like you had like your bros or whatever, but you didn't actually have like, you kind of maintained like some sort of distance so that it like didn't blend over into this other kind of like eros love or something like that, or it wasn't seen as that or whatever. And that was because kind of the view on homosexuality at the time and stuff like that, right? There was I don't know if you experienced that, right? But I didn't get close. I didn't get close to like my dudes, like my guys, like actually having kind of brothers and having that brotherly affection, I think, until college.
Yeah, same for me. It was with friends in high school and growing up. It was all, we were doing stuff together that was fun, and hanging out. We knew each other, and
that's a big part of friendship. That it is actually finding something to do together. I love what C.S. Lewis says. He says if you're looking for friends, like you're not going to find them, right? But if you're trying to actually accomplish something or do something, and finding people that want to do or accomplish or play the same sport or whatever, then you'll find friends, right? You actually have to be someone who's moving after something, and then friends will come along. It's like friendship is about two friends that find commonplace in something external, not in each other. It's different than eros love, where it's like we would talk about our love for each other and like all the time. Abby and I are talking about I love you, oh, our affection and all this stuff or whatever. And then sometimes we focus on external stuff too, and that's a good balance. But friendship is in large part purely about, like, Daryl and I are friends because we podcast with each other, we do leadership together, we pastor people, we love on people, we both love board games, we make board games together, we worship together, all of those different, it's things that we do together that makes us such good friends.
And the common interest, even if it's not an activity, but even like fascinated by the same ideas, right? That's like how our relationship really kind of started and grew, was just talking about things together.
Right.
We both were fascinated by the same types of conversations.
Thoughts, yeah.
And that's what really built their friendship and relationship, was in that context. Yeah. And I love, it's interesting because it's kind of like indirect, this way that this love is like expressed in there. It's like not necessarily about the individual to the individual, but there needs to be a third thing that is there to bring them together. Mm-hmm. But C.S. Lewis does talk about the difference between, because one of the first things that came to mind when I was thinking about this was like, well, as far as like there's no social reason or psychological reason or biological reason, I was thinking like survival, tribal, and and the theories about social constructs and why we band together with other people. And it's about more than that. It's not just about being with other people for the sake of survival, but really going to a deeper, more intentional level of relationship and intimacy with a friend.
Right.
And that's something that I didn't do or even know really was possible, I guess, with friends until college. Whenever I had a friend where we ended up having really intentional conversations. Right. And it's interesting. And I just thought about this, but that's kind of where I started practicing vulnerability. Right. And practicing being vulnerable with somebody else, because if I had waited until I got married to Brittany to practice being vulnerable, it probably would be really messy, or like, I would be really uncomfortable talking about how I feel that honestly about things. Right. But it was in the context of friendships where I actually learned how to express more intentionally what's going on inside of me.
Right.
And it wasn't with my family, but it was in that phileo space with that brotherly affection that I had built with somebody, where I learned actually how to do relationships better. It wasn't just in that one relationship, but relationships overall. I learned how to express myself more and be more present and be more vulnerable in that space.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful. And I think we've missed it. I mean, Daryl and I, we talk about it often. We just like high-fived each other before we started podcasting. We're like friends. Like,
I'm grateful.
I'm grateful that we're friends and that we have such a good friendship and that we have that type of brotherly affection in our lives, because a lot of people don't have that, I mean, I can't only speak, but mainly speak for like the guys, you know what I mean, that I see, right? That they don't have like other dudes that are like really, really close to them, especially as you get older, like the husbands and stuff like that. It seems like community gets less and less and less, right? And a friendship is not just somebody that you see at work, or somebody that you maybe talk to sometimes, like it's about that mutual like camaraderie, right? And it's about actually, joining together, again, going back to C.S. Lewis, it's basically like a great rebellion,
right.
Where it's like two individuals can come together for like an external, an external cause, and it's like totally getting to grow in this beautiful context that could be even against society and culture and the tribe and all this different kind of stuff. Like, It's this beautiful thing where, that I don't think many people have true, genuine friends. They have people to hang out with, but I mean, in the kids that I talk to, and a lot of the adults that I talk to, like community is a huge thing that they're missing. Like genuine friendships, people to actually talk to them about things, people to actually like get to know them and provide them that safe space of vulnerability that you were just talking about, right? People that yeah, exactly, to hang out in a different type of love, to experience a different type of love than just like that eros love with their spouse, what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that type of agape or whatever,
Totally.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And I think it's important. I think that and talking about these things are important because it helps us draw a line and distinguish these different types of love, which we have one word in English for, these different types of love, but that are both necessary. They're both different, but they're necessary, and they should be expressed kind of in different ways, right? We don't expect our friends to have the storge kind of love for us, and vice versa, storge with phileo. It's like, it's being able to understand and almost to see love viewed in a different way allows us to act in love in a different way. It allows us to receive love in a different way. And so having these different and more having clarity on what does love look like? What is love? I love that Bob Goff has a book called Love Does. And then he talks about the very practical part of love, because it's something that we don't often talk about. But when we can engage in these conversations and be intentional to look at things in a certain way, it helps us live in a different way.
Totally. And the next kind of love is eros, or erotic love. And this is I would say, in our culture, seems to be like the pinnacle or the height of love, or it's at least made out to be a lot of the time, is like this erotic love. But it's finding like a deep desire for the one in front of you. It's a finding of yourself in somebody else, a gazing into the one, almost a consuming of in a good way, a consuming of the other person, right? It's a desiring, affectionate, erotic type of love, right? That biblically in marriage that we seek through intimacy, but it's not just limited to sexuality. As far as actually having sex, that doesn't mean that you're only having eros love when you're having sex, but it's in the actual desire, almost to what C.S. Lewis, to like eat that other person.
It's like a craving for them.
Craving. Yeah. It's a craving, a deep, deep affection for that person. Right.
Yeah. And I think that this, like what you mentioned, is important, that it's not just about the sexual side of things, but that deep desire for another person. And this is more specifically about a romantic relationship, right? This is about a significant other, somebody who, that person that we're drawn to and craving and desire. Like I think I said when I was talking about, when I say I love Brittany, one of those things is my desire for her. Like I desire her. And it's not just about a sexual thing, but just her and like this desire for intimacy and closeness and to be seen and to see her. And I think that this can be so twisted nowadays, because when we talk about love in the erotic, this kind of sense where we get this, the word eros, and with a significant other or romantic relationships, it so quickly twisted. Gets to a physical thing and limited to a physical thing.
Right.
And whenever a love is just based on the physical aspect, it's like you're missing so much of what could be whenever it becomes just about that. But that's what gets popularized. That's what gets magnified in our, like in media so often and so easily, is the sexual erotic side of things.
Right. And this is not a lower love morally or something like that. This is a good, healthy, beautiful. Erotic is a word that is not commonly used to describe something maybe that's wholesome, right? But that's where we get this eros love is a good love, a God-given love to find your craving, to even find it's almost a finding your being in another person, right? There's this desire to want to be so close that you are one, and that's what Scripture talks about, right? When you when you get married and you know each other, you have sex, right? The two become one flesh, right? There's a joining of souls, there's a joining of bodies, there's a connection, there's this intimacy. You're becoming one with somebody, right? And I think that's like. That's the craving, right? That kind of desire, right?
Yeah, I just reminded of a little video that I watched. I was talking about Plato talking about love, and he tells this story of if a drunk comedian were to describe what love is, he would probably say it like this: that the humans used to be creatures with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 heads. One day they got angry, the gods got angry at them, and Zeus cut them all in half and spread them apart, right? And then what the experience of love is wandering, looking for your other half, is feeling like you're not whole and you're out to find somebody who's going to make you whole. And that is I think a very common understanding.
Right.
And I think that for me,
finding someone that completes you.
Yeah, finding somebody that can complete you.
Right.
For me, I think that's one of the most dangerous and unhealthy things that can happen.
Right.
Because like we said earlier, what happens is we're trying to find somebody to make us complete. And then so suddenly that other person is an object for our mission. It's like now
for our completion.
For our completion. Like they are meant to serve us.
And it's Mission Impossible. Tom Cruise.
Mission. That was good, Aaron. That was good. And suddenly our desire to find wholeness is actually damaging and taking from somebody else. We're trying to take somebody else and make us whole.
You're naturally going to drain somebody else that you're trying to use to complete yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like because naturally you're going to consume them in order to fill up yourself.
Yeah, you're trying, right? It's that the desire, even that eros, the desire to consume. It's like it can become very dangerous where now we just want them to make us whole. And it's not about loving them anymore.
And that's how it gets so twisted with, talk about pornography or talk about, any other millions of other ways that, sexuality or eros kind of love has been perverted or twisted, corrupted, right? Now it's this object that satisfies me, right? That fills me, right? Yep. And then that immediately becomes rather to become two ones becoming one, right? It's like this drawing from another person, this, I guess, codependency, right? Like where you're each drawing from each other, and when you're both drawing from, each other as well, you'll never be filled up, right?
Yeah.
And that's why there's this constant even addiction to sex, to pornography, to lust, to all of those different kinds of things. Is it's drawing from somebody else's, using them. I love Proverbs. It says, "Draw from your own cistern."
Yeah, draw from your own cistern.
Yeah, he says, "Listen to me, boy.
Well.
Draw from your own cistern. Get from your own well. Don't be drawing, don't be drawing from other people, right?" And that's what the exploitation of sexuality allows us to do, is to have some other cistern and start drawing from that, some other well and start drawing from that, right? Which ultimately leaves everybody empty.
Yeah, right. We ended up being empty because then they're hurt and we're hurt because we're not actually whole.
And it's not the fullness of love. And that's the whole reason we're given these different types of love is of course we're not going to be fully satisfied, because if we have zero friendships and only erotic love, you're not going to be satisfied.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you don't have good storge love or good even, affection with your family, if you have terrible relationship with them, you know what I mean? But you're so focused and you have friends, but you have maybe no erotic love, like it's not the fullness of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you can't maybe be happy and sometimes you have the cards you're dealt with, right? but we can grow in these different areas to have a more complete picture and be filled maybe in these different areas of love, in a good sense, not to be needy, but
that's good.
Yeah. And the last one,
Agape.
Probably everyone's heard about this.
Agape, yes.
Maybe.
If you are a Christian, if you've gone to church a few times in your life even, you've probably heard the word agape.
Yeah.
And that's a word that we usually talk about it being an unconditional love.
Right. Selfless love.
A selfless love, a sacrificial love, unconditional. And this is probably I guess if there were, something that is bigger,
right?
It would be this kind of a love, right? The
Right.
complete selflessness and loving somebody for the sake of loving them, right? And not to get something or because they earned it, right? Because it's unconditional. It can't be earned and it cannot be lost. It's something that can only be given and can be received. And this unconditional love.
Right. Yeah, I think the others, though it's important to have all of these in order, I think the others hang on this one.
Right.
Because I think eros can be immersed in agape, and phileo could be immersed in agape, and storge could be immersed in agape. And I think all of those other different types of love, when they're kind of enveloped by this self-giving or self-sacrificial love, they become healthier.
Yeah.
So when you're craving for somebody in an erotic love also becomes selfless, and your desire is to crave them for even their satisfaction, holy moly, you just hit something, like that's crazy, or your desire in a friendship is infused with this, I'm going to give of myself so that, greater love has no one than this, Jesus says, than to lay down your life for your brother, right? So for another. So I'm actually going to see this friendship as somebody that I'm going to support and honor and lay down my life for, and that kind of stuff, right? It actually strengthens that bond, that loyalty. And the same with storge, right? All of those unhealthy things that we talked about, that familial love, they can kind of get washed by agape, right? Some of those trying to stifle maybe your kids in protection mode of all of that affection, right? You start to realize, no, it's actually giving. I have to release my children, you know what I mean? Because my storge is caught up in agape love, in the letting go type of love.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And I think that whenever we do love out of that place, if that's really the foundation of the kind of love that we are giving, whether it's that storge, the affection, the familial, or if it's the friendship, that kind of friendship type of intimacy, or that sexual desire, or the eros, it makes it better.
Right. Yeah.
It's like all those things are good things. None of them are bad things. And then especially when we connect it to this idea of agape, it's holistic. I feel like that's really where we can come from, a whole place where we are not trying to get something from somebody. Whenever we experience that one for ourselves, I think that I think that sometimes it's hard for us to love somebody else because we don't feel whole. And so we are trying to get something from them in order to feel whole. But if we are to receive a love and know that we are loved, and we know that we don't need to try to get love from somebody, when we experience this agape love, we can love from a place of wholeness.
Right.
Because now we feel whole and complete. We don't feel like we need to take from somebody in order to be complete ourselves.
Yeah, and we'll go into like the more of the biblical side of this, but I think ultimately this is the God love. This is Jesus' love, the agape love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, right? So for God so agape'd, right? So he gave, right? It was like even the word is within the context of him literally laying down his life for us, right?
Yeah.
So this is like, and that's how we can actually move from that place of need love to gift love, is actually receiving the agape of God, right? The becoming one, right? And again, we could talk about this in the next episode. I'll try not to jump too far away because I get excited, but even in marriage, the oneness that is experienced in marriage is merely a reflection of the oneness that is experienced with God. Right? In relationship with God, the church, God and his bride, the church, right? We become one with God. God lives in us and we live inside of him, right? And in that bringing into the relationship with Jesus, that's where we experience the agape of love can actually be filled. And because we're filled from a source outside of ourselves that can never be drained, right? We're able to give gift love to everybody else because we're not drawing from broken cisterns in order to be filled, right? We're drawing from a source that never runs dry. But we can talk more. And now I'm going to start preaching, so I'm going to lay off.
That's good. So let's end it with, when we talked about talking about love for these next 3 episodes, we talked about how we want to grow in love and grow in receiving love. So what are some things that we can do to grow in love, or to love better, or even to receive love better? Yeah.
I think recognizing first these different types of love that we've talked about, right? And noticing how they have awareness is the first step, and that's usually where we start, right? Is actually becoming aware of how is this a different type of love, and what are my views on love that we talked about earlier, right? Because if we have broken views of love or limited views of love, that's going to affect the way that we love people. It's going to affect the way we love ourselves. It's going to affect our spiritual life and the way that we love God. So I think becoming aware of our own broken and limited views of love, and then maybe taking these 4 Greek words as a starting place, read this book. C.S. Lewis, The Four Loves, is an amazing book as well, right? There's plenty of stuff, and then I would say, we'll talk about it again next week, but get in the Word too. So
yeah, I think that's good. There's I think you said it. Being aware of our current understanding of love, growing in that, and even in awareness in how I am expressing my love for somebody else. Right. If I say that I love somebody, what am I actually doing that shows that I love them, and where is that coming from? Right. What kind of love is that I am exhibiting towards that person? Right. And in friendships, how can I love better? In with my wife, how can I love better? Family, how can I love better? Those are questions that I want to be thinking through, because I want to learn how to love better every day. Right. I don't want to go back and, look back 5 years from now and not learn how to love better, because I feel like there's so much opportunity, and that's an area that I can always be growing in. Right. And so I know those are questions I want to be asking myself. How can I love my wife better? How can I love my family better? How can I love my friends better? How can I love myself better? That's a good question. Right. Yeah. That's not a question maybe we would regularly ask ourselves, right? No, but I think that it has to come from that place too. Because if I'm not loving myself, I'm probably going to end up feeling empty and wanting to take from other people. Right. Yeah. But if I can receive love, if I can work on receiving love better from my wife even, and receiving the love that I get from friends and from family, and obviously, from God, what does it look like for me to receive his love and to love him better too? Yeah, that's good.
And speaking about the friendship aspect too, asking your friends their views on love. You know, I think that's an important thing. One, it'll open up a deeper conversation already. Bing, bing, ticket, right? You know, to open up, hey, how do you see love? How do you experience love, right? And then to ask them even, you know, how could I better love you, you think? You know, like, is there any way that you don't feel loved by me? How could I love you? You know, if we want to love better, I think clear communication is always a good way to start, right? And I know that takes a lot of vulnerability. That's very hard to do. You have to be close to the person that you're asking for those things, and you know, but I think if you find those right people to ask, you know, that's extremely helpful to say, how can I love you better, right?
Yes.
And then they can actually give you practical ways to love them better. And then it's like, you don't have to be like, trying to think inside your mind. You literally at least have one or two things that person told you. It's like, okay, I can start there.
Yeah, because the way that we think they want to be loved might not be the way that they actually want to be loved.
Right. Yeah, people experience love in different ways, but...
Yeah, I think that right there is a very practical tool, and it's very vulnerable too. Because when we say how can I love you better, we are admitting that we might not be doing the best job. Yeah, you know, but we want to do a good job, which
and
I think that's
that's a hard one right there, is to actually accept. I don't love all the time, you know, or I would try to, but I might not be the best at it all the time, you know, and to actually admit that and to say like, how could I actually do it better? Actually have it as something that you intentionally want to grow in, right? I don't think that's like, you know, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a general thing that a lot of people have on their minds, you know? Yeah. It's like, how can I grow in love today? You know, it's more often, you know, I want to experience love today. And if we don't, we get disappointed we didn't experience love, right? Instead of how can I actually grow in love today? And I think as you grow in love, you're going to grow in being loved as well. So
that's good.
That's good stuff, Daryl.
All right.
Come on, man. We're back. YBOG all day, baby. Hey, come on. And our first one was over an hour. My gosh, we have way too much to say. This is beautiful, and it's not even over. We got 2 more parts to this bad boy. But we love you guys. Make sure to jump back on to Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram. We're going to try and start posting there more as well. Thank you for listening to this series, and we'll get back to you in a couple weeks with the next one on love.
All right.
Love you guys.
Peace.